Hi there. Uh,
Hi.
this morning in Hong Kong, how are things in Ann Arbor?
Well, it's nighttime. It's quiet. We've been under quarantine for a month now. uh,
Ooh,
yeah, but Ann Arbor is a kind of town where people understand. So when they're told to stay at home, they stay at home. So it's nice, for the first time. Like the birds are everywhere. There's like so many rabbits. There's so many squirrels. Like it's just nice. Like it's just, spring is happening without us, which is nice. So the way it works, and I've done reviews, I've done them in New York at the Javits Center for Photo Plus. I've done them in Atlanta for Atlanta Celebrates Photography. I've done them in Houston for Photo Fest. Um, I think those are the ones that I've done in person. But they're always the same. So basically, you have a room where the reviewers sit, and each reviewer has their own table, and um, and then the photographer comes to you. They sit down and they show you their portfolio. They have 20 minutes, and then when the 20 minutes are done, they get up and leave, and a new photographer comes and sits down. So as a reviewer, I'm reviewing somebody every 20 minutes, like several, like 20 photographers a day. No, they don't pay us.
yeah, well, no, I know they don't pay you, but they pay the photo festival.
Yeah, the reviews, having reviews is usually what finances the whole festival, because the photographers pay to participate in the reviews, and that money helps to uh, put on the exhibitions that they do for the festival and so on. Um, so uh, usually, and if you saw on my bio and if you looked at some of the other bios as well, there's a little place in the bottom where it says what kind of exhibit, what's the sort of work I'm looking for. It doesn't mean that I'm always going to see that kind of work, but it helps, you know, it helps because there's very specific kinds of exhibitions that I look for that would work. But I don't always get that. So sometimes, so I get a lot of photographers who are documentary photographers. I get a lot of photographers who do portraiture or a lot of actually documentary is probably the most I'm thinking about the last one. I saw 6 portfolios that dealt with climate change. I saw um, I think I saw 3 photographers that traveled to India and photographed different cultures in India. um, but some photographers have very personal work, and they didn't ask to be seen by me, but they ended up with me anyway. And sometimes I look at the work and I tell them right away it's not right for my company, because it's just I can't market this show. It's not the kind of show that a museum will pay us to rent. It might be a kind of show that a museum will take, but it's the kind of show that the museum curator wants to find themselves. Um, and when it comes to our photographers who are not famous, um, the reason for a museum to rent an exhibition by a photographer that's not famous is usually because they have a check to fill, like it's February is Black History Month, so we need an exhibition about civil rights. And it's easier to just go to a company that has already exhibitions already put together and say, what do you have about civil rights? Great, we'll rent this one. And they can check it off their list, and then they can do something else, you know. Or maybe they have a big exhibition of Impressionist art in their main gallery, and they need something small in their other gallery of, let's say, what were photographers doing at the same time, or
like French photographer at the time,
exactly.
something.
Yeah. So when I look at somebody's portfolio, and I can tell right away, this work is really, you know, somebody's doing pictures of nudes in the swimming pool, or see all kinds of stuff, or I don't know, they're traveling and they're photographing the scenes outside their windows in hotels. That's their entire project. Or you know, they're doing some kind of like photo collage thing, or they're whatever it is. It could be very interesting, it could be very great, but it's not something that a museum is already looking for. It's the kind of thing that you have to show to a museum, and they'll say like, oh, that's really great, let's do this. But that's not what we do. How we work. Here's something I like to tell. This is what I like to tell photographers when I try to explain to them how our company works. I like to say that we are kind of like the J. Crew catalog, or the Gap catalog of exhibitions.
J. Crew is like a fashion label
Yeah.
in the US. Okay.
Or the guy, but is there something similar that would be, it's specific. It's the kind of company that sells things that, you know, they sell blue jeans, they sell t-shirts, they sell like hoodies, they sell work boots, they sell, you know, winter, like sports coats, things like that. So if you know that you want to buy jeans, you can go to that catalog, open the section about jeans, and find the jeans that you like. That's what we are. If you know that you want an exhibition about civil rights, you go to the website, you look at what we have about civil rights and see if something fits. But if you want something really unique, you're not gonna go to a catalog. You're gonna go to Neiman Marcus, or you're gonna go to, you know, or you're gonna go to Berghoff Goodman. You're gonna go to a boutique, and you want to find something that's one of a kind. Or you're gonna go to a fashion label and find something one of a kind. That's not what we do. And so, and not every exhibition is a Chanel. So,
Yes. Okay. Let me sort of like put it sort of like in layman terms for our audience. For example, you are doing a certain kind of exhibition. You're focused in certain type of artwork. Okay. For example, if someone that is young and they are preparing a portfolio, they have to be aware that different people are looking for different kind of work, right?
yes.
So doesn't mean like you don't like his or her work is the end of the world. Okay, you have to be aware of that. I think that's right. That's important for new artists. That rejection is not the end of the world, right?
And so, and I learned this when I was working as a gallery director, because I would get a lot of submissions all the time. And as an artist myself, you know, it's hard to, when somebody says, no, thank you, they don't tell you why, you immediately think like, oh, you know, they hate me. But so I was always very careful to explain, you know, sometimes you can say, the work is really good, but we don't have clients for this. And that's all it is, because it's a business transaction. You know, we are the wrong company for you, because our clients, this is not what our clients come to us for. And So that's one thing. Another one is for a young artist, if they are looking for opportunities, and for example, if they're looking for opportunities for a gallery representation, it's important to see what kind of gallery it is. So, because different galleries have different personalities. There are some galleries that have a very kind of contemporary, avant-garde, experimental art. And some galleries that, you know, maybe their clients are more conservative and decorative. Or another gallery that is mostly selling vintage, rare vintage photographs by dead artists, you know. So
Yes.
you want to find a gallery that you want to do some research. For example, you want to look at what artists they already represent and see if it's a good fit for you. And more importantly though, just because they sometimes they'll say like, oh, you have an exhibition about this and this is what I do. And then my answer is like, yes, but I already have an exhibition about that. I don't need two, because then it's creating competition. So, and not everyone is going to be nice to you about it, because anybody in this position, whether it's a traveling exhibitions company or a gallery or a photo editor, they're getting bombarded with submissions all the time. It's the same thing as if you're just sending an application for a job. You want to make sure that you are right for the job and the job is right for you. And so if they see something and it's clearly wrong for their gallery, what it tells them is that you didn't even bother to do the research. And so why would they're busy people. They've got 20 others to respond to, you know, and it takes time to respond to each one. They sometimes won't even bother responding because they feel like you didn't take the time to do your homework. So I think that's a very important lesson to learn. And I think sometimes it's okay if they write back and say, thank you, this isn't right for us. It's okay to say, can you tell me why it's not right? Or could you, I'm just starting out. And sometimes you get somebody who's generous with their time and is going to give you some advice. So, sometimes, and I would write to an artist and say, your work is really good, but it's really it's more editorial. It's really meant more for publication in a magazine, maybe, to go along with a story, not as a standalone thing. A lot of times I tell photographers that I look at their work and I say, your work is more for retail. It's fine art. It needs to be in a gallery where the audience are people who want to come and buy a photograph, as opposed to in a museum where the audience is just people off the street who want to look. So those are two very, very different things. And the kind of thing that somebody wants to, the kind of audience that comes to buy art and the kind of audience that comes to look at exhibitions in a museum, there's definitely overlap, but they're very different in a sense, audiences. And if you have a gallery exhibition, you're gonna try to have things that are sort of similar so that the buyer can find their favorite. That's what they're doing. They're looking at everything and looking for their favorite. If you're a museum curator or you're doing an exhibition for a museum, they're not there looking for their favorite. They're not buying anything. You want to create a story. You want to create an experience. You want to give them something that they can't get just by looking through the book. You want to give them an experience of like, why should they bother coming to a museum, maybe paying to come to a museum and looking at the exhibition. And so sometimes it's about what else you're showing them, how it's presented. Sometimes it's because they're unique photographs and it's the only place to see them. So sometimes it's the programming that comes with it. Maybe you invite speakers and educational components and so on. So there are different reasons for looking at the photographs. So that's, and not everybody's work fits into every category. They're kind of, some exhibitions make really good exhibitions, some photographs, they make for really good exhibitions because they tell a really good story, but individually, they're not, each photograph by itself is not such a great photograph that you want to buy it and put it on your wall, and vice versa. So you should, I think the more you know what you want, and I think when photographers ask me for advice about going to a portfolio review, my best advice is to know what you want to get out of it. The better you know what you want to get out of it, the more you'll get out of it. If you go into it with just this kind of like, I'm just going to show my work and hope to get discovered, that's not going to happen. If you just, I see all kinds of work. I see beginning photographers who have the money to come to these things and they just want feedback from experts. And that's a really valuable thing. They know that their work is not ready for prime time. They know they're not ready for an exhibition or a book deal. But they want somebody who is not a teacher, but they're not getting graded, but somebody who's working in the real world.
What grades? Nobody cares about grades for some reason.
No, but there's a difference, somebody who's actually working in the real world to say like, oh, your work might be really good for this kind of thing. You should, this is a direction you should look at, or, this is really interesting, or you can get some really valuable feedback. And I've heard sometimes that some of the best feedback they get is negative feedback.
So please elaborate a little bit, okay? What do you mean by negative feedback? Okay, I think that a lot of students, sometimes they don't understand. Sometimes they can learn a lot from what we call, say, a negative sort of feedback or criticism.
Constructive criticism. And a lot of times it depends how it's said. So I think there's, it really depends on why you want to be an artist in the first place. And as far as I'm concerned, everything is valid. So you can decide that, you're making art because it helps you heal. It's a way of expression. And it looks, you show it to people and they're like, oh yeah, they're beautiful. They're beautiful photographs of flowers. This is what you like. That's great. It's always good to have some questions. It's always good to know, to want to get something from it. And that's why we say criticism is good, especially when you're starting out. Let me give you an example of good constructive criticism. When a photo editor tells you your work is good for commercial. You're making very good commercial work, but you're trying to be avant-garde. You're trying to be very edgy. You're trying to be like the next sort of hot photographer, but your work is very, if you try to be the next hot photographer, you're going to fail. But if you recognize that maybe you're very talented doing good commercial work, you can actually succeed. And sometimes it takes somebody who has been doing it for a long time to look at your work and say, this is what these are your strengths, but also these are your weaknesses. And it doesn't mean that they're saying, don't do it. But sometimes it's good for somebody to say, there are 50 other photographers who think they are being very original, but are doing the exact same thing.
Small world.
And it's okay. If that's what makes you happy and you want to do this kind of thing, you can, but you need to know what your goals are. So if your goals are just to make photography or make art and that makes you happy, good. But if you have goals of becoming famous as an artist, or selling your work, or having an exhibition or a book, then you need to do more than just do what makes you happy. You need to know what people want to look at. You need to know who else is making similar work. And you need to see how you can stand out. You need to see how you can be unique, how you can be your own voice. If you like to photograph flowers, I'm just going to give a simple example.
Yes.
You're photographing flowers, and there's so many other people who are photographing flowers. So maybe maybe your flowers, you want to look at why do you photograph flowers, maybe, or maybe you want to look at, somebody can say, look, these photographs of flowers where you're very, very close to the flower are more interesting and more unique. Maybe you should do more of that. And sometimes you need somebody from the outside to say that to you, because they don't know you. They don't know what you're trying to do. So they can be more objective about what they're looking at. And maybe they say to you, those are really nice flowers, but they belong on a calendar or postcards.
That's for the audience, that could be a bad thing, okay? That could become is too general, too generic, okay? Something that you see commonly every day. Well, we still have a market, but not in a fine art gallery, not in a museum sort of standard.
Right, exactly. It's a very different thing. And I think it's important, and yes, it can be hurtful to hear that your work is very generic. It doesn't
belong to, say, a prestige, gallery or some sort.
But it's also important to know, because you could spend the next 50 years of your life doing this, hoping to become the next big photographer of flowers, and it's never going to happen.
Yeah, it's more like a wake-up call, right?
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, you can also discover that you could be the best photographer of postcards.
Yes, or sometimes say even like you might have the most follower on IG.
Exactly. So I think what a good reviewer can help you if you're a beginning photographer, if a young photographer, a good reviewer can help you see where your work is good, what your strengths are, not what you hope to be, but what you actually are. And if you listen, you can decide, well, but that's not what I want. But then you know that you have a long road to go before, you know, if you're fixated on becoming a big fine art photographer, it's good for somebody to tell you early on, this is not the way to do it. Sometimes that kind of negative criticism, it might sting, it might hurt a little bit when you first hear it, but when years later, when you're doing something better, you will look back and say, thank God somebody told me not to do that stupid thing I was doing 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, even Walt Disney was, when he was young, people call him not creative, right? Something like that.
Yeah, so that's one way that a reviewer can help you even when you're just starting out. Another way is to just give you a better idea of what is out there. So for example, like I said, most people, even in the museum industry, but definitely photographers and artists and just general people, don't even know that there is such a thing as a traveling exhibition. They don't even know that that's an option. But once you know, you don't need to have a company. You can create an exhibition and send information to museums, and you will find museums that will rent your show.
If you work, you've done enough work, you might just propose yourself to a museum, just so to speak.
And I'll give you another example. A photographer that I know, and she takes these surreal photographs with, like, she makes her own lenses or something, and they're kind of, and she was doing reviews, and one of the reviewers told her, she said, you should, your art would be really good as book covers for novels. And turns out that there are representatives that do just that. There's a whole industry that you can, if that's what you're good at, there's a whole industry that's what they do. They're editors that look for art to put on the cover of a book. There, or another one might say, like, your work would look really good in a hotel room. And again, there's a whole category. There's people that's what they do. They search for art that would look good in a lobby of a museum, or at the office of an architect, or, you know, so on and so on. And you don't know that you have all these options. And to have people who are who have been working in this field for a long time tell you that is nice. And or sometimes, you know, you have an editor of a newspaper that says, you have some good photographs that illustrate stories. We do stuff like that. Sometimes we can use your photographs for that. So those are things that can happen. You can sometimes find the right person. It says, oh, your work will be very good one day, keep in touch. Or you might find someone that will say, your work might be very good for this kind of industry. You should really research that. But the other piece of advice I would have is a portfolio, putting together a portfolio. And that's very important. And one of the things I see sometimes, and it's the worst mistake you can make, is if you just select 20 of your favorite photographs.
Yes.
and put them in a portfolio. That's not a portfolio. That's just your 20 best photographs. And especially now where we have digital cameras and you can shoot 1,000 photographs, you're gonna get 20 good ones. A month will get 20 good ones. A robot
Yes.
will get 20 good ones. So if you have 20 good photographs, but they are each very different, what it's telling me is that you don't know what you're doing. You're just shooting and hoping for something. And that's okay. But if you want to be taken seriously as a photographer or as an artist, what curators and gallery owners, what we look for isn't just a successful photograph. Everybody gets lucky eventually. My mom has some really good photographs. Everybody eventually gets lucky. The question is, can they get lucky again? Probably not. So what we look for is somebody that knows what they're doing and has a consistency. So portfolio doesn't have to necessarily be one project, but it needs to look like it was taken by one person who has a unique eye, a unique vision. That's what really stands out. That's more important than the actual quality of each photograph. Because the quality of the photograph, how good the photograph is, that's subjective. I can tell you that right away. I can have 5 reviewers, important people, the editor from the New York Times Magazine, the curator from the Houston Museum of Fine Art, you know, a gallery owner from Los Angeles. Some of them will love it, will think it's brilliant. And some will just, what is this? I hate it. So that's not the important thing. But I can look at a portfolio and see that this is a really good project. And within it, maybe some of the photographs are better than others. Because to me, I can say, these are my favorites. And I can tell you why they're my favorites. I can say, this is working because of this and this and this. This one might not be as strong because it doesn't have something or other. But I can look at if it's put together as somebody's work that's been, that together it has a meaning. I know that as a photographer, you're going to keep taking photographs, and eventually you'll get more good photographs.
Right.
And again, it's good to have negative feedback in that situation. It's good to know what photograph works well, but it's also good to know why something doesn't. And sometimes the photograph that the photographer thinks is their best photographs because it looks like a good photograph might be the one that we all agree as reviewers is not that good. Because it looks like something somebody already took. Or maybe because it's so focused on the composition or so focused on some color or something that it misses the whole point of what the project is about. And sometimes as a photographer, you don't see that because you're too close. You're too close.
You're too close.
And so sometimes it's important to have somebody tell you, yes, this one's good, but this one is for a catalog. But this one is a little more complicated, but it's interesting. and interesting is always better than just pretty. Take chances and be true to yourself. Do something because it feels right, not because it looks right.
And also, I believe like what we have discussed, say, because photography had been invented, say, for less than 200 years. However, there's so many people taking photographs. So a lot of time, people come up with, common themes that they think, oh, they are so unique. But however, many people have done it before.
Exactly.
Okay? That's why you need to do research. You need to go out there to meet people, and sometimes it's good to have someone review your work. For someone say you have seen so many stuff, right? And then you find, oh, okay, I haven't seen this before. That would be the click. Yeah, that would be a good sort of direction for for someone who have never seen, or you may be young who just start out and you have not seen much before. Okay, so which is a valuable experience, for someone just started out, or student looking for something, or sometimes student just go to a class and had a bad grade and they're so sad about it, right? That could happen. So in our industry, sometimes it's not exactly the grade, or what kind of feedback you get, and it could be the end of the world. You just get a bad feedback, right?
But in a way, you can say that somebody that gets, when they're just starting out, and if they got really lucky and got some really good photographs from the start, they never actually learned.
Yes, yes.
Because
that could
lucky. Whereas somebody that tried something and then tried it again, and maybe something else, and maybe change direction, or this or this, by the time they get to something good, they know why it's good. They know why it's good, and they can do it again. So it's just that thing, like, you have to fail in order to know that you succeed.
Yes, yes. So there's something sometimes like for younger artists or younger students, they may not understand. Sometimes failing is interesting. It's good.
Yeah.
There's sometimes like students are so aware of say, I want a good grade, I want an A, and sometimes they forget about what they're doing the work for, or why they're doing it. So sometimes it takes a bit longer time for them to understand the what it's all about. So
one of the other really good things about going to a portfolio review is the networking aspect of it. And not just because you get to meet people in the field, because they'll probably forget. When I go do a portfolio review, I review 80 people in 4 days. And most of them, I try to, and they keep me informed, but you meet other photographers. And that's so important. And these events are international. I reviewed people from South Korea, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Germany, Greenland, like all over the world. And it's very interesting to see how photographers, what they're doing in different countries. But when the photographers, they always form like really good bonds, and they stay friends, and they share information, and they have this really lovely network, and they look at each other's work, and they give each other feedback, artist to artist. And sometimes that's where you really do a lot of learning or just inspiration, because you might see something that you've never seen before because somebody is doing it, and you're talking to them and you're hearing what they're thinking, why they're doing this. And maybe suddenly you're like, oh, wow, this gives me a really great idea for something I can do. So it's a, exactly, yeah. But I would say regardless of where you are in your career, you're just starting out, or if you have a little bit success already or whatever, it's not the only, like, portfolio reviews are, they're good if you want to get something out of them and you need to know what you want to get out of them. If you just want to get feedback, that's good. If you are ready, like you think you're looking for a book, you want to do a book, and you go there and that's your goal, you want to find a publisher, or you go there and your goal is to get an exhibition, or your goal is to find out what your work is good for. But it's if you go there and you don't know what you want to get out of it, then you might miss all the important stuff that's being said to you because you weren't waiting to hear it. So, and I think that goes for anything, but in general, and especially when you're not in school anymore, you find that, you know, when I was a student and we had critiques all the time, and then you were in a lab and there were other students around you, so you're always talking to everybody about your work, and then you get into a critique and you're telling everybody about your work and they give you feedback and it's really nice, and then you graduate and suddenly nobody cares. Nobody knows anything. You're showing your work to your friends and they're like, oh, that's nice. And you're showing it to your parents, they're like, oh, that's nice, can you take a picture of our baby, you know? And you find that it's very hard to, when you're not in school anymore, it's very hard to find peers. It's very hard to find other people who want to talk to you about art the way you want to talk about art, who are interested in ideas or want to give you feedback and show you their work and have a critique. And so it's really important to have a community, to find that community. And going to portfolio reviews is a really great way to get in there. There's also, you know, some of them are online reviews, so you don't have to travel very far.
Oh, okay.
One of them is so one of the big ones that it's more of a competition, but it's Critical Mass. It's run from a gallery in Oregon, and you submit your work and they have something like 200 jurors of all kinds of people, but a lot of them are reviewers, do other reviews, and they review your work and rate it, and then you get down to like the top 200 and then the top 50 and then the top 3. But along the way, you get all these people in the field to look at your work, and they have a place to leave feedback. And sometimes it takes more than once. Sometimes I see work, somebody puts their work in front of me and I say, I think I've seen this before. Where have I seen this before? And then I realize, like, oh, I saw it last year at Critical Mass, or I saw it the year before that in a different portfolio review. And maybe the first time I saw it,
then click.
And I see it again, or maybe during this year they got even more, you know, they did a tighter edit, or they got better, and suddenly it's like, wow, this is really good work. So if you are interested in having your work exhibited or seen or somehow out there, you have to put it out there. So look for opportunities to enter juried exhibitions, look for online portfolio reviews, they do exist. And sometimes they have them in, like they're connected to universities or part of smaller festivals. But it's sometimes the best thing you can do is have somebody who doesn't like what you're doing review your work. Because they'll be honest with you.
Great. I think that would be more than enough for most of our viewer at the moment. So I'm so glad you we sort of connect through Zoom during a difficult time.
Yeah.
And we got to talk to each other for over an hour. This is great. And I'm so grateful that Ms. Gurevich had helped us to talk about her company and her experience as a reviewer. So I give her a bit of a pause, and hopefully we'll set up maybe a short Q&A time in the future. Okay.
Yeah, that would be great, because that's better than me trying to.
We have two talking heads.
Like what would they want to hear? Better if they actually ask the question, and then they'll know the answer.
Great.
I don't know. Can I just say one thing? Like, is it?
Sure.
It probably came through on here, but and I don't know what level your students are at. So a lot of what I was saying, you know, I was just kind of talking, and I don't know how much of it was tailored to the actual audience. I just to reiterate, like I think one of the best things you can do as young artists starting out your career is keep your options open, and because sometimes there's a lot of, like, for example, and you'll see it in the longer version. What I do for work, working with museums, you know, offering them exhibitions, I didn't even know there was such a thing until I started doing it. And then once I started doing it, I met artists who have been exhibiting in museums through this. Like, they just knew, but most people don't know. Even a lot of museums don't know that there are services like that. And there's a lot of other opportunities that there's a lot more opportunities out there. They're very diverse. So just, you might start out thinking that you know what you want to do. You want to be a fashion photographer, or you want to, you know, work for National Geographics and, you know, document in the Amazon, or you might think that's what you want, and that's great. It's really great to have a passion, and it's really great to kind of like see if you can do that. But also know that between the fashion photographer and National Geographics, there's probably about 50 other ways that photographers are working, that photographers are making a living. And that's one of the really wonderful things about not just photo reviews, but also just leaving yourself open to see what is out there. And you might find that your work is perfect for that, and you didn't even know it existed. So for that reason, like, just if you have any specific questions while I'm still here about working with museums, and I don't know how it is in Hong Kong.
Yes, it's slightly more different because we don't have so many different venues, and
right, yeah.
But you know,
but internationally,
yes. sometimes we have collaborations with, say, cities in China or cities in Japan. We could have different sort of collaborations. Say, I've seen like Hong Kong photographer exhibited in Japan,
Yeah.
and we have sort of like an annual book fair that
Yeah.
photographers or publisher from,
Yeah.
say, from Japan, from Taiwan, from China, they are all gathering.
Yeah.
Normally in March or in April, they'll have like a small room and they show all the good books. And normally I spend a lot of money on a
Yeah.
day.
It's
Sometimes I
just like,
find good inspiration, and sometimes just buy books for, say,
yeah.
I may find you may benefit a certain students, or a certain way. So and then
Yeah.
sometimes we have like photographers that sort of come with come to the book fair. So
Yes.
I'll talk to them in person as well.
Yeah. But I think, I think it's important to just look at all your options. And just another word about this criticism, like negative criticism or constructive criticism, but even just rejection, as hard as it is, and I don't like it either, but just know that every artist, every photographer that is successful was probably rejected many times before they
Yes,
finally made it.
yes,
And sometimes you're rejected because sometimes it's rejection that has nothing to do with you. Maybe they already have something similar. Maybe it's just not right for them. Many reasons. And sometimes it's a rejection because you need to know that you're trying to be a fashion photographer, but it's not going to happen for you. And it's better to know and either figure out how to get better or see maybe there is something that's better for you. And the negative, as hard as it is, that rejection is the thing that helps you find your path. In many ways, for some artists, if the first thing that they did out of school, if it was a success, like they got like a show or sold something right away or just got famous right away, it seems like we're all jealous of them, like, oh wow, they made it. But the reality is that for many of them it's almost like a curse,
yes,
because they haven't had a chance to really find their voice, and they got discovered too soon, and now for the rest of their career they're gonna just have to either keep doing the same thing over and over, even if they don't even if they have outgrown it, or risk trying to do something new, and if it's not good, the failure, the fall from grace is awful. And you can think about that from young musicians, like they get discovered early on and they do something, and then they want to do something new, and the criticism that comes because they are known for what they did, and there's a lot of pressure to make it for the next thing to be even better. Or else maybe they have gallery representation and the gallery's like, I don't care what you want to do, the clients want the thing that made you famous. And then it becomes, you might as well just be a commercial photographer because you're just up for hire, you're just so sometimes be careful what you wish for. Sometimes being rejected can be a good thing because it lets you really get better and try again. So
yes. I totally agree. I've seen, say a documentary, a videographer, that they have an early success, and then they sort of stuck in the past and never sort of grew from it.
yeah,
So that could be really sad. Especially for talented young people, if
yeah,
they have early success, that could be something
right,
they may never get out of. So
right. And
that's a bit
also,
problematic.
also, and I see this a lot when I do portfolio reviews. I see photographers who have had a very successful commercial career, and now they're older and they have money, and now they're following their passion. And so for every like success story that we all hear about, like the one artist that made a big splash, there's going to be 500 other artists who are really good and have been doing solid work their whole career. They may not get the same, you know, there's only, it's just the nature, you know, it's like a pyramid. There's the nature of it is only one gets to be on top. But,
Yes.
you know, if you focus on like, that shouldn't be anybody's goal to be famous. Like, what does that mean anymore? You know,
Right.
not
Like Andy Warhol said, you know, 15 minutes of frame was like,
exactly,
you know, 30, 40
exactly.
years ago. Now it's like 10 seconds of frame, you
And
know,
so,
with the, with the
exactly.
internet and everything, you know, with the, you know,
Yeah.
the go rival thing, you know, the
Yeah.
less than 10 minutes, you're going to be forgotten.
Yeah. And don't forget that, I mean, and I don't know, again, I don't know who I'm talking to and what sort of you know, goals they have and what kind of work they do, but I work with mostly museums, and so I work primarily with fine art photography, um, but there's a whole vast other kind of photography out there. There's photojournalism, you know, where you get paid to go take photographs as stories rather than to sell them. And then there's commercial photography, and you can excel at that. And I think they're all good. They're all valid as long as you're happy. And maybe you you become a really good, successful commercial photographer, and you feel like, oh, but that's not your calling. You don't have to only do that. You
Right.
can do commercial photography to pay the bills and then have your own passion on the side. And then you can have a lot more freedom to pursue what you really want to pursue, because you're not trying to make money from it. You know, that's not your main, it should never be. If it's really art, you know, it's wonderful if you can join the two and make money from it, but sometimes you have to find some other way. Most artists do. When I was a gallery director in Chicago and in New York, and the working photographers that we represented, all of them had a day job. They all worked as either professors teaching photography, or they had like a commercial practice where they had like a commercial studio or did commercial work, but or did commissions, but they all had a day job. The number of photographers or artists who can make a living exclusively from selling their art it's like a 0.001% of all the artists out there. Everyone
Yes.
else has some way that they're making money. And if you are good at the commercial part and you can make money that way, do it. Do it.
Yes. Yes. So yes, even though, I mean, like, you know, say in the US, it's like a much bigger art market than say in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
For example, in China, it's a whole different ball game. Okay, in China, the art market is also crazy, but
Yeah.
yeah, but in Hong Kong, the art market sort of like, you know, it's not very well developed, so
Yeah.
to speak. So it's really difficult to be, say, a fine art artist that can live by selling their work. It's
Yeah.
almost impossible in Hong Kong at the moment. Okay, I can't say 10 years from now it's going to be different. I can't say, you know, what's going to happen in the future. But
Yeah.
in the meantime, it's quite difficult. You know, yeah, that's why yeah. So I'm so glad you share all this experience with us, and you know, I'm so grateful. Yes,
Thank you all.
yes. So if there is not much, this is almost 11 now. Okay. Uh, I've seen you've been like painting and doing other stuff during the day. You must be tired. So
You know, yeah, but it's okay. It's not like I have to get up at still
9 in the
home.
morning.
I'm not going anywhere. So,
Okay, so
good, but yeah.
if nothing, if we have no new questions or there's nothing, people want to know about, we have like, 2 videos, one long, one short, that caters for, different audience. And
Yeah.
we have like details, explanation, and then I'll share a lot of links underneath. And once you find a proper host, I'll send everyone a link, and
Okay,
I'll
great.
send you personally, the edited version. That's
Cool.
fine. Okay.
All
Just
right.
yep. So I guess that's about it, right?
Yep.
For this section.
Great.
Everyone
Thank
okay?
you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye. Thank you. Bye. I'll see you soon. Hopefully I'll see you someday. Yes.
Yeah.
Michigan or go to New York or something. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye
Bye.
bye.